Hello, I'm Mark Knorr, and welcome to Talking Inspiration, a series for Campaign in which I interview leading figures from the creative and marketing industries and ask them what inspires them and why. Today my guest is Daniel Bonner, Global Chief Creative Officer of Razorfish, one of the world's leading digital agencies. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, Mark.
Daniel, I'm fascinated by the whole idea of inspiration and where it comes from, where it leads to, and I'd love to know where you get your inspiration from.
I think that it's often not from the most obvious places, and I think that I actually don't really ultimately look for inspiration in the industry or in the kind of often where I am at. I often find it maybe when I'm not looking for it, and I often find it often when I'm maybe, again, driven through a passion that I particularly have, or maybe something I'm watching, or something I'm attending, or something I'm doing, and I'm kind of like, wow, this kind of works, or this is something that motivates me or inspires me. And very often, it might be from an engineering point of view, it might be from a service that I might get from a kind of, from part of my life, from my bank. Hopefully, or something that you've never done before, seen before, that motivates you and think, wow, why hasn't anyone else done this like this? And I think that also those things are often the really small things. They're often the details, the kind of, the tiny touches of magic which which are kind of baked into a particular thing. And so it's like, I think often those small little pieces of magic get lost and get drowned out by everyone's ambition to do something big and something spectacular.
And what's inspiring you particularly at the moment?
One of the things that really, as I've sort of investigated it more, have been really inspiring to me is that this kind of British cycling phenomenon which we've lived through. I've been into cycling for 25, 30 years and kind of been sort of quite good at it and then not very good at it anymore. And as someone who does it for leisure, what's really interesting, what I see and sometimes could bring into work is what's happened to British cycling, which is this kind of incredible rise from nowhere, a sport that was dominated by the Italian and the French and the Spanish and other nations. And when you get into it, this whole sky cycling, this whole kind of phenomenon, which has basically been masterminded by David Brailsford and the British Cycling organisation, around these small, again, we kind of come back to those small touches of magic that they apply to their training and to how they kind of pull the team together and how they focus on what it is that they're going to achieve. And they have this guy called the Director of Marginal Gains. And it's his job to ultimately look at the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3% advantages that they can get through all the different things that are involved in running a cycling team. So whether that has to be around diet, where they sleep, the clothes they wear, where the bed linen is laundered so that they don't catch disease, and all these tiny little kind of things, the focus and attention is absolutely incredible. I think actually seeing where you can have performance improvements along every touch point is incredible. And I think where that plays a role in our world is that I think brands have to look now with so many more kind of, with a utterly kind of dispersed touch points, 30, 40, 50 touch points per brand, per any kind of consumer. I think that, if you actually then start to look at not just the big obvious ones like, the telly ad, the cinema spot and maybe the retail kind of environment, what about all the other kind of touch points as well? And I think that there's an opportunity, to look at the little details along the way and create magic along the way in order to lift the entire performance of the whole brand and the perception that people have.
So do you think as agency folk we should all be directors of marginal gain?
Yes. I think, I think high standards, again, it's something that's what it is. It's being prepared to go to the absolute end to make sure that it's absolutely as good as it can be.
Is there someone that inspires you by what they do or what they say or how they behave? Who inspires you?
Recently I met an astronaut, which doesn't happen every day. So a gentleman called Charles Duke, he was the 10th man to walk on the moon. He's one of only 8 still living. Very obviously very interesting. Not every day you get to meet an astronaut. But what was interesting about Charles' story was that he said to get him on the moon and his 2 colleagues, 3 of them on Apollo 16, is that there's 400,000 people in a kind of pyramid like that, which kind of, which makes sure he gets there. And one of the really interesting things that they would do as astronauts is that they would always try and make sure that they would meet people along that kind of supply chain that got them there as a way of motivating, as a way of making them feel important. So one of the things they used to do, they used to go out to where they actually used to make the spacesuits. And so they would go and meet the ladies that would sit and they would hand stitch their spacesuits. And they would make it very clear to the women there that, well, if you don't stitch that correctly, I'm going to die. Because nothing can get inside my spacesuit.
No pressure.
And and like you said, everyone obviously laughs. Oh, that's kind of scary for those seamstresses. But actually, they saw that as a brilliant thing because all of a sudden they were a small part of making this mission, brilliant, and they were mission critical.
Daniel, I asked if you would bring an object with you that inspires you, and something's telling me that it might be small. On the basis that that's an emerging theme in our conversation.
It's funny you should say that.
What might it be?
Well, I have brought with me possibly the fastest salt and pepper pot on the planet. These are salt and pepper pots from Concorde. I mean, Concorde in itself is clearly a phenomenal story. But I think, again, to kind of what can be learned from the lengths that they were prepared to go to, is that even while travelling faster than the speed of sound, that they would even imagine that anyone cared about the salt and pepper pot that was in front of them. Custom designed, the kind of the unique Concorde moniker made by Royal Doulton. So they went and found the finest, porcelain that could ever be kind of crafted. But I think to know and to care enough that the brand Concorde is so important that it even deserves the tiniest detail, it's kind of, I find that inspiring. And I think, again, when you talk about standards and when you talk about, the small things that can actually have a massive difference, tiny ideas can punch well above their weight, and I think they can really kind of seem insignificant. Again, in business and in sport, people talk about the non-critical essentials, kind of the things that seemingly don't matter but actually make all the difference. And I think that, there's a big opportunity for us to kind of create those things in the work we do.
Daniel Bonner, Creative Director of Incremental Gain. Thank you very much.
Mark, thank you.